I think you can let everybody in now. Welcome, friends. Psalm 121, prayer for protection, Shir LaMa'alot. The words are in the chat. If you click on the download, you should be able to grab them and just open them up on your screens. This is a psalm that has grounded me for many, many different moments. And in this moment of grief, in this moment of loss, I am wondering what is grounding you. So if you want to, please add your name into the chat, who you are and where you're calling in from. And maybe there's something that's grounding you in this moment in time. You can add that into the chat as well. My name is Naomi Les, and I'm here representing Lab Shul, coming to you live from Camp Ramah Jerome in Clayton, Georgia. And I'm feeling grounded by just being in community here tonight. Shir LaMa'alot, Esai Einai el Harim, Me'ayin yavo Ezri, Ezri me'im Adonai, Oseh shamayim va'aretz, Al yiten ramot raglecha, Al yanum shomrecha, Hineno yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael, Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha, Al yad yeminecha, Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka v'yareach b'layla, Adonai yishmocha mikora, yishmor et nafshecha, Adonai yishmot tzedcha uvoecha, ve'ata ve'ad olam. ועד עולם.
Thank you, Naomi, for bringing us so meaningfully into this space together. Naomi Less is the co-founder, ritual leader, and associate director of Lab Shul. She's also a dear partner of both Kavod V'Nichum and Shomer Collective in her work around holding grief and loss. My name is Sarit Vishnevsky, and I am the executive director of Kavod V'Nichum, a nonprofit that supports the growing movement of progressive and pluralistic Chaver Kadisha, burial societies, or as we say, sacred communities, throughout the United States and Canada. Chaver Kadisha is the Jewish communal response to the end of life, the rituals and practices that we engage with as a community to support one another during painful and challenging times. This is one of those times, and we're grateful to be here together. This gathering is intended to help us mark Shloshim, 30 days, to honor the memories of those killed on October 7th and the days since, and to remember all those who are still missing. May they return home soon and safely. We arrived with song, and we will close with song. In between, we will learn Torah. We will say the Mourner's Kaddish together. We will create and hold this moment in time as a community. After Naomi closes our space, we will gently exit this room. Know that we extend our hearts to you as we head into our evening and our week ahead. I want to expressly share gratitude for two members of our community who, in the days following the horrific attack on October 7th, reached out and said, we need to create a way to bring everyone together. Thank you, Debbie Makamal and Yael Gallinson, for inspiring and co-developing Kavanah, a Shmira-inspired resource and ritual, and tonight's Shloshim gathering. And to all of our partners who have shared these opportunities and invited participation from their communities, thank you for bringing us together. And thank you to the Shomer Collective for your partnership in co-creating tonight. We're grateful to be in this space with you and to be learning from you. And now, I'm honored to invite my colleague, Rabbi Melanie Lavav, Executive Director of Shomer Collective, to share her Torah.
Thank you so much, Sarit, for inviting us to join you here tonight. Shomer Collective's work is about improving end-of-life care and conversations inspired by Jewish wisdom. We do this work with individuals and families, as well as with professionals and organizations, serving as a concierge, a curator, a convener, and a change agent, working to normalize conversations about death and dying in Jewish communities for every age and stage of life. Over the past month, in response to the horrors of October 7th and each day since, I've heard and read a lot, as I imagine you have as well. So many pieces, starting with the phrase, "There are no words." Well, it's common to hear this in response to tragedy, even hearing it often at the opening of a funeral. Jewish wisdom offers us many words to speak to the experiences of death and mourning. Rabbi Earl Grollman of blessed memory, a master of consolation in a time before grief specialists, wrote, "In times of crisis, silence is not golden. When we make a visit to a Shiva home, it's customary not to speak to the mourner until they have spoken first. We enter in silence and we sit in silence until that silence is broken by the mourner. When we leave a Shiva home, it is traditional to say the words, Hamakom Yenachem Etchem Betoch Sha'ar Avlei Tzion B'Yerushalayim. May you be comforted among the other mourners of Zion and Jerusalem, recognizing that mourning is not a solitary experience. May their memory be for a blessing, we say, when recalling one who has died. Zichronam livracha. Min hashamayim tenuchamu. May you be comforted from the heavens, said by Sephardic Jews. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, blessed is the judge of truth, said upon hearing the news of a death or at the time of rending one's garment as a mourner. Jewish tradition offers us plenty of words to try to speak to the shock of death. Tonight, it might be most appropriate for us to say, Mishtatfim b'tza'archem, we join in your sorrow, which is what's said today in present-day Israel. Tonight, we come together to mark Shloshim, 30 days after the massacres of October 7th. At the 30-day mark, it's custom for the mourner to gather with others and to study in honor of the dead. Tonight, we come together to do just that. Thank you to Rabbi Adina Luides for leading us tonight in study. Adina is a cherished community member and educator for Kavod V'Nichum. I pass the mic to you.
Thank you. Nai, 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 nai. Nai, 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 nai. Nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai, 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 nai. I, nai. My friend and my teacher, Rachel Brody, Zichrona Livracha, of blessed memory, spoke about mourning as an experience that begins with a contraction of sorts, with what the mystics called tzimtzum, a pulling back in preparation to birth a new reality. How I wish she was here to help guide me and us through this harrowing time to what comes next. Instead, on this night of stepping back to mark this first month of mourning, as we contemplate the long and uncertain road ahead, I'll open with some of her Torah on grief. Coming together as a community to mourn creates a set of spiritual and emotional axes, she taught, coordinating our position on earth just when we feel so profoundly lost. The horizontal axis is made of the fellowship among us as we grieve, fellowship that reaches across physical and even ideological space that may divide us. The vertical connection aligns us with those whom we remember, with the past that they inhabited and animated, and the future which we pledge to build in their names. Along these axes, we come together tonight, seeking both connection and inspiration, groundedness and elevation. Rachel also reminded us that our courageous Jewish tradition doesn't try to diminish or explain away our pain. Instead, it holds us through it as we face its undeniable reality. And as we move through the phases and the rhythms of our mourning, the facts don't change, but we change in relationship to them. And our rituals, such as this Shloshim gathering, support us through those transformations. The changes we're all experiencing as this dark chapter in Israeli and Jewish history unfolds are many and varied and intense. We're trying, and many of us still failing, to emerge from the shock of the brutal, barbaric massacre of October 7th to a sober recognition of the evil that persists in our world and the relentless, murderous hatred of the Jewish people. We're integrating into our daily emotional rhythms and activism our constant worry over the fate of more than 240 hostages still in Gaza. We're dealing with our growing anxiety over the vicious and violent anti-Semitism that has erupted all over the world with singular intensity on college campuses. We're working to hold together complex, often conflicting feelings that include outrage over the constant condemnation of Israel on the world stage and our concern for innocent lives caught in the crosshairs of our existential war against Hamas. And of course, there are other transformations that we're facing as well. But there's one particular change that I want to address tonight that I'm not sure we've had the communal or emotional space yet to wrestle with. I'll ease into it with a story. My mother is 85 years old. She was raised in a non-observant, secular Jewish home. As a young adult, she felt increasingly drawn to Jewish tradition and became Orthodox when she married my father and joined his family 64 years ago at the age of 21. What might have begun as an accommodation to her in-laws very quickly took hold of her as a deeply personal religious commitment which has sustained her to this day, long beyond my parents' divorce many decades ago. While our beliefs about God are quite different, I've always been moved by my mother's unwavering faith, a faith which has rejoiced in the Jewish people's triumphs, especially Israel's miraculous rebirth and growth, and a faith which has mourned our tragedies, especially Israel's endless cycles of terrorist attacks and wars. My mother and I are very close. We speak every day or two. I know how deeply affected she's been by the horrors of the last month. It has consumed her waking hours and disrupted her sleeping ones. But I was not expecting to hear her say what she said when we spoke a few nights ago. For the first time in my life, and I think for the first time in hers, with a trembling voice and unstoppable tears, barely able to muster the courage to say it, my mother confessed that her faith has been shattered, that she could no longer believe in the covenant made with the Jewish people that God would love and protect us. On October 7th, 2023, and over the ensuing weeks, the relationship my mother always believed she had with God ended. It opened another layer of mourning for her, and I know she's not alone in that particular grief. I can only imagine the crises of faith among those more personally, more directly affected by the massacre. We've heard many echoes of the Jewish past in our efforts to describe the terror of October 7th, the Khurban, the destruction of ancient Jerusalem, the Spanish Inquisition, pogroms, the Shoah. The loudest echo reverberating in my mother's pain is the book of Job, a book which contains one of the most profound challenges to the rest of the Torah, and yet, I think, one of the most hopeful messages for us today. The normative biblical tradition encapsulated in such iconic texts as the Shema teaches that if we do good and follow in God's ways, good things will come to us. V'haya im shamoa tishma'u el mitzvotai. If you vigilantly obey my commandments, I'll give rain for you in your land in its proper time. You'll harvest your grain, your wine, your oil. I'll put grass in your fields for your cattle, and you will eat and be satisfied. Hishamru lechem pen yivteh levavchem v'sartem. Beware lest your hearts be swayed and you turn astray. Adonai's fury will blaze among you, and God will close off the heavens, and there will be no rain, and the earth will not yield its produce, and you will perish swiftly from the good land which Adonai gives you. Our generation is hardly the first to challenge that description of the world and say, no, that is not the way the world works. That system seems to be broken. Long ago, the Talmudic sages wrestled with this question of theodicy. Tzadik viralo, rasha vitovlo. Why do righteous people suffer and evil people prosper? But even well before that, The book of Job challenged this broken system when the central character, a righteous man named Job, blessed with numerous children and abundant animals and riches, becomes the pawn in a game between God and Satan to see whether Job's loyalty to God is only because of his good fortune in life. Under God's watch, Satan kills Job's children, destroys his property, inflicts Job himself with a terrible illness, and thus the test begins. In a close reading of the book, my friend and colleague Rav Chaim Ovadia offers us 4 models of how the text responds to this timeless question of why bad things happen to good people, and ultimately offers us a redemptive model for living a faithful, righteous life in relation to one's own people and to others, and even to one's God. In response to the trauma of losing his children, his property, and his health, Job remains steadfast in his loyalty to God, not so much his wife. Job's wife says to him, "Otcha machazik betumatecha, barech Elohim v'meit." You still keep your integrity. Curse God and die. She says, how can you sit there and still sing praises to God? The system doesn't work. There is no justice. Just give up. Curse God, invoke God's wrath, and let it all be done. Job refuses to listen to her. He accepts that evil and suffering are inevitable parts of life and maintains his devotion to God. And then some of his friends come along and say, the system works perfectly. Of course, God's world is just. The righteous prosper, and the wicked suffer. You just thought you belonged to the former group, but really you must belong to the latter. You and your children must have sinned to incur God's wrath. You just don't realize what you've done. But the system, my friend, works. Job rejects them too, insisting on his innocence. Instead, he starts to speak of surrendering to a God whose overwhelming power he can neither challenge nor change. He gives up on justice at that moment and instead submits to God in the hope that it placates God's inscrutable, unyielding power, and that it leads to some restored blessings for him in the future. In other words, Job's devotion to God becomes self-serving and self-protecting. And finally, one more friend comes along, Elihu, and offers the 4th and last paradigm-changing response to the injustices of life. He says, no, my friend, you've got the system all wrong. Our human actions have no impact on God. They neither provoke God's punishments nor God's blessings. Im chatata matif albo, v'rabu psha'echa ma ta'aseh lo. If you sin, what do you do to God? If your transgressions are many, how do you affect God? Im tzadakta ma titein lo, u'ma mi'atcha yikach. If you are righteous, what do you give to God? What does God receive from your hand? With these lines, the book of Job challenges the entire biblical system, which suggests that God responds to what we do and either punishes or rewards our actions. Elihu says that asking why God allows bad things to happen to good people is to ask the wrong question. Whoever and whatever God is, and if God even is, for those who among us wrestle with that question itself. God is not affected by our choices to inflict terror on each other or to show compassion to one another. The only beings affected by our choices, this reading suggests, are our fellow human beings. Leish kamocha rishecha, uleven adam tzidkatecha. Elihu says to Job, your wickedness affects people like yourself. Your righteousness affects mortals just like you. With this single line, the whole Torah's theology is reworked. We should do mitzvot not because we seek to satisfy God, but because living a righteous and compassionate life is the right thing to do. We should provide for the needy and support the vulnerable, not because we believe we'll be rewarded for that with either material blessings or even divine protection, but simply because others will benefit from our actions. That is the most noble way to honor our own humanity, the sacred lives we've been gifted, and the humanity of those with whom we share this world, and the source of life itself. For some people, this theological shift requires a letting go of long-held beliefs of how God functions in our world and in our lives. It's yet another loss to be mourned in this time of overwhelming loss. But it can also be, I hope you'll agree, a source of deep healing and hope, reinvigorating our commitments to bring love and generosity and respect and humility and hope to those who are suffering, driven not by theology or politics, but by our very humanity. For the Torah's essence lies not in its simplistic fantasies of reward and punishment, like we saw above in the Shema and many other texts, but the heart of its promise to be a source of holiness, of meaning, and of purpose lies in two frequently quoted words these days from the book of Devarim, Uvacharta b'chayim, choose life, choose the lives around you, choose love, choose chesed, choose kindness, choose tzedakah, choose each other. In that way and only in that way do we choose the divine, the Holy One that permeates and unites us all. In the names of those who were murdered 30 days ago, in this moment of urgency to build an olam chesed, a world of love, may our renewed commitment to one another restore our shattered faith, heal our broken hearts, and bring Israel and the world to peace. Yehi zichram baruch, may their memories be for a blessing, may the injured be healed, may the bereaved be comforted, and may the hostages be brought home. Thank you. With deep affection and respect, I now turn to my friend and my teacher, Yakir Englander, the Senior Director of Leadership at the IAC, the Israeli American Council.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Adina. Thank you. A few powerful poems and tefillot, prayers, were written in the past months, and I would like to share with them a poem by the Orthodox poet Bakol Serloi. The name of the poem is Shmo. אלוהי אופקים, אלוהי בארי, אלוהי זיקים, אלוהי חולית, אלוהי יחיני, אלוהי ישראל, אלוהי כפר עזה, אלוהי כיסופים, אלוהי כרם שלום, אלוהי מגן, אלוהי מפלסים, אלוהי נחל עוז, אלוהי נירים, אלוהי ניר עוז, אלוהי ניר יצחק, אלוהי ניר עם, אלוהי נתיב העשרה, אלוהי נתיבות, אלוהי שדרות, אלוהי סופה, אלוהי סעד, אלוהי עין הבשור, אלוהי עין השלושה, אלוהי אלומים, אלוהי פריגן, אלוהי רעים, אלוהי שבת קודש, אלוהי תמימות שלא תשוב עוד, אלוהי עיניים שלא יעצמו, אלוהי הילדים המתים, אלוהי הבתים השרופים, אלוהי בצרה ובשביה, באיזה שם אקראך עד שתענני? אני יראה לבשר, חרדה מהאדם, עזובה ומרודה בעין פניך. למדני סתום מן המפורש, שעה שאתה נגלה בזעם, נוכח במראות האימה, ריבועות הדם, רסיסי הנפש. הלומי כאב עתנו לחלות פניך, בהאסף כל השמות, הפנים המוראות, רק גאיית שופר מרה מנפש. אייכה. And now we'll recite the Kaddish, and please say the Amen with me at your homes. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
ועלמא דיברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו,
Amen.
יהא
רבם
שמם
נוכח
רבם
לעולמי.
יברך לעלם ימי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו יהא שמה רבה ומיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו
Amen.
עשה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן ואמן. And now to close, Naomi Les.
Thank you, Yakir. We started with what is anything that's helping us stay grounded right now. So Rabbi Luidus shared, choose life, choose chesed. And I wonder, maybe we can end by thinking about and even putting into the chat, where can you bring chesed right now?
What about Hatikva?
Thank you. We're going to be singing a different song to close, but thank you so much for sharing. So I'm going to invite you to sing along with me the words that are used to comfort a mourner. Hamakom Yinachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar B'leitzon B'Yushalayim. The melody was written by my dear friend Aviva Chernik. And I'm going to just invite everybody to stay on mute so you can hear the words in the melody. But please sing in your homes and send that out to all of the mourners, including all of us. May you find comfort. May you find comfort. May you find comfort in God. May you find comfort. May you find comfort. You find comfort in God. Hamakom Yinachem Etchem B'toch sha'ar B'leitzon B'Yerushalayim. Hamakom Yinachem Etchem Yinachem 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 Etchem. I invite you gently, as you leave this sacred circle, this sacred space, with such a beautiful community gathered today, to allow yourself to go back into your night or afternoon with gentleness, with care, with a couple of extra breaths of compassion. Thank you to everybody.